We are the Childhood Collective, and we have helped thousands of overwhelmed parents find joy and confidence in raising their child with ADHD. I'm Katie, a speech language pathologist.
And I'm Lori.
And I'm Mallory, and we're both child psychologists. We combine the science of ADHD with the compassion of moms and bring you practical tools you can start using today.
So hit subscribe and let's help your family shine with ADHD.
Listen up, parents. We are so excited for today's episode because it's a little bit different than our others. Today's guest, Katelyn Mabry, is the host of her own podcast called Journey with Me Through ADHD, a podcast for kids. She creates short, kid-friendly episodes helping them understand and embrace their ADHD brains.
So we asked her if she would come on our podcast today to create an episode for parents to listen with their kids, tweens, or teens. Thanks for joining us today, Katelyn.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited to have you on to do an episode that's a little bit different than our others. And speaking to you parents listening, we know that you're all at different stages of your ADHD parenting journey. Some of you have kids who aren't yet diagnosed, while some of you are years into your journey. So we recommend first giving this episode a listen. And if it feels like it's a good fit for your family, wherever you are in the process, grab your kid and listen together.
Okay, so to start us off, Katelyn, why don't you share a little bit about why you created a podcast and wrote a book for kids with ADHD?
Absolutely. My journey actually started when I was 10 years old. I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I just remember feeling at 10 years old like, what does this mean? What does it mean to have an ADHD brain? Is there something wrong with me? What's going on? What do these words mean? What does it mean for, my day-to-day life? And I just remember being super curious about it. And there wasn't a lot, 30 years ago, there wasn't a lot out there about ADHD. And so it kind of took me on this journey of curiosity. And so as I grew, I started to develop even more of a curiosity because I was experiencing these big feelings. I was experiencing struggles with friendships. I was experiencing all these things, and I didn't realize that they were all linked to the fact that I was living with this ADHD brain. And so the more I learned about it, right? So I went to school to be an early childhood special ed teacher, and I'll never forget being in my class. That's actually where I wrote my book in college. This professor saying, publish this book. And I was like, well, I'm not equipped to publish a book. What do you mean? Me, an author? And so, but it led me on this journey of better understanding ADHD and having a deep desire to help children understand their sweet, brilliant, colorful, busy brains at a younger age.
That is so awesome. And when you were 10, did your parents, were they the ones that told you, hey, you have ADHD? Did the doctor meet with you?
I'll never forget, we actually got in the car after I did the full test, the full series of tests for hours and hours. And I got in the car and my parents looked at me and they said, you have this thing called ADHD. And I was like, am I going to be okay? What does that mean?
That's a valid question for any kid. Am I going to be okay?
Am I going to be okay? And do other kids have ADHD? Like, I had so many questions in my little 10-year-old brain, and they did their best with what they knew. But they honestly, they're like, you know what, sweetheart, we're going to figure this out. We're going to, help you any way that we can, make things a little bit easier when they feel hard. And so my parents did the best that they could with the information that they had at hand. And so did my teachers, honestly. But it was a struggle because a lot of things, like the little things like checklists were put into place and, those organizational tools. And, when I was distracted, I was given tools. But then there was this whole other world of ADHD that I was yet to discover. And so that's kind of what led me into wanting to do the podcast. I love to talk straight into the hearts and the minds of kids to really help them shed any sort of shame that might be attached to getting diagnosed with ADHD, help them feel seen, help them feel heard, help them feel understood and loved just as they are, and just help them to know that they are more than enough and that there are tools and strategies and, hacks and tips and tricks that you can put into place to truly thrive with an ADHD brain.
I love that. And I know that you're helping a lot of kids. And by doing that, you're also helping a lot of parents who are maybe like your parents who want to tell their child everything they know, but they don't know themselves or they don't know how to, put it in kid-friendly terms. And so I know that you're helping a lot of kids and you're helping their parents. And so I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about what makes ADHD brains unique. What makes them special?
There's so many really cool, unique aspects of the ADHD brain. And I think too often it's clouded by the things that can feel tricky sometimes. But the really cool part about our brains is that it's so colorful and there's just so much versatility and spontaneity and creativity, and there's just so much going on up there that can be channeled in such amazing, brilliant ways. And so I think like I said, sometimes I think those star qualities of having an ADHD brain are clouded by some of the things that feel tricky. And so that's why I think it's so important to lead with our strengths as we navigate through the struggles.
Yeah, and one thing we know a lot about kids with ADHD, they want to do more easily is handle their big feelings. So for a lot of kids, they get angry really quickly, or they worry a lot, or feel scared a lot, or they feel like they're just out of control at times. So this is one thing that can get them into trouble at times. And we also know that it's something that's hard for them to control in the moment, even though I know that they really want to. They really want to control. It's just very, very hard sometimes. What would you tell a kid who is struggling with those big feelings?
Absolutely. We all are very deeply feeling kids. And I say we because I'm right there with you. I haven't shared this yet, but I have 3 girls who are diagnosed with ADHD. So I have a household full of very deep emotional, deep feeling kiddos. And so
Mhm.
there's lots of emotion expressed in my household. And that's the thing, is sometimes those emotions do feel out of control, and you do go from what feels like 0 to 100. And the bottom line is our brains are a giant muscle. And like anything, we need to exercise it and train it to practice the pause and response method over allowing the explosion. I have a very personal example. So my son was having a really hard time with his big, intense emotions at school, and he completely erupted, and it really got out of hand with his behavior. And as much as it was not acceptable, there was definitely an explanation behind it that we needed to explore, and we needed to
Mhm.
figure out what the why was behind those big intense emotions he was
Yeah.
feeling, and how we could both teacher and me and him, how we could all collectively respond in a healthier way next time, right? So the feelings are going to come, right? We're going
Mhm.
to feel angry, we're going to feel frustrated, we're going to feel irritated with our sibling, or with mom or dad, or at school with a peer, at the playground. We're going to feel the feelings, and they're going to be deep and they're going to be intense, but it's a matter of becoming aware of how to respond to those feelings in a different way. And in doing that, it's practice and exercise, just
Yep.
exercising that muscle to get better at responding in a different way. So, for example, we put a plan in place for my son. He has a calming space in his classroom now. We have a weighted blanket there, we have a stuffed animal there. So, we came up with an action plan. We came up with a plan for him to pursue and try
Mhm.
when those feelings come again. It's about problem solving and coming up with a plan, and then practicing that plan so that
Yep.
you can exercise that muscle.
Sometimes as a kid, it's just hard to know, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, what do I do in those moments? And maybe if somebody asks you, if the teacher's like, well, what do we do next time? You're kind of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But I think a lot of times your parents and your teachers can give ideas, and you can let them know, yeah, that would be a great idea. I love that. Or no, that's totally not going to work for me because I don't like weighted blankets. Whatever it is, you are an important part of that plan, and you have an important voice to tell your parents and your teachers what feels right to you in those moments, or what is going to help calm you.
Absolutely. And that kind of, I mean, that pours into just the power of self-advocacy. And that's a skill that that can
It's
be
another
practiced.
muscle.
It's a muscle. That's a muscle that we can practice. But no, you're absolutely right. It's so important that it's customized. Whatever the plan is, it's customized to your beautifully brilliant, busy brain. Because like you said, what works for me might not work for you.
Yeah.
And what works for her might not work for that, your friend next to you. So it really does depend on your preferences and what you find helpful. I have some kids who find breathing helpful and some kids who find breathing triggers more anxiety, so different things work for different kids. And so I think the whole idea of listening to your body and finding what works best for you is huge.
Something that you mentioned earlier, Katelyn, was just like tune in with what you're feeling. And I feel like that's really the first step for kids, is just reflect back on the situation and how was that really feeling for you? And also thinking about, are there like reliable, anytime I'm in this place or anytime this thing happens, I feel this way. That's going to help the grown-ups help you. So for example, like Katelyn, your son had a hard time at school. Is it every time during reading when he's asked to read out loud that triggers a big feeling? So start to pay attention to what you're feeling, and if there's, specific times or situations that you feel that way, because then adults can help you problem solve that a little bit better, give you some ideas about how, we can make that easier.
Absolutely. And to speak into that, I wanted to introduce this whole idea of role playing it. Like once you do identify triggers, a lot of times a helpful tool is role playing the situation and, talking through what it might look like to respond in this new way. Because anytime you do something new, it might not feel natural and it's not something that your brain goes straight to. So if you can role play it and talk about and maybe even add a mantra. I did a mantra with my son this morning. I am safe. I can handle this. I am safe. I can go to my safe space.
We always say practicing what the plan is when you're calm is so important, and doing it over and over again. So in your son's situation, it might be going in the classroom and the teacher practicing asking to go over to his calm down place and practicing using the calm down space, practicing using his mantra. It feels weird sometimes when you're not having those big feelings, but it's really hard to practice when you're like super, super angry.
And we practice so many other things in life. You have soccer practice so that you can perform well at your soccer game. You rehearse your dance over and over and over again so that when you get on stage at your dance recital, you know the moves by heart. We practice so many other things in life, and this is just the same, right? Like you said, the brain is a muscle. We're learning a new skill. We have to practice it in order to be able to expect ourselves to be able to perform it well when we really need it.
Exactly. And I tell a lot of the clients I work with, I say practice makes, and almost all of them say perfect. And I'm like, oh, wrong. Let's try again. And they kind of look at me and I said, that can be a slippery slope, because is there anybody that's perfect? No. Let's take on this new thought of practice makes progress. Right? Yeah. Practice makes progress. We need to practice in order to progress and learn and grow.
I think that's so important. And I want kids to know that they don't have to be on this journey alone. They can and they should ask for help when something feels hard. And I know that's challenging for a lot of kids, because especially when you're having big feelings a lot of the time, it just feels like you're out of control. You don't know what to do about it. You're not even sure that things can get better. You're not even sure you can do something about it. But ask for help. You don't have to do this alone. It can get easier.
I love that.
Thank you so much, Katelyn. This was awesome. And we love that we could have you on to talk to not just the parents in our audience, but the kids in our audience. So thank you again. Do you want to share a little bit about your podcast and your book and how people can find you?
Thanks again for having me. You can really get to all of my information on my website, www.katelynmabry.com. And then there's a link to, if you wanted to follow me on social media or get on my mailing list, my book's on there, my podcast link's on there. So that's kind of the hub for all of my information. And I do offer one-on-one coaching. You can get on a consult call if that's something that you wanted to explore as a part of your journey.
Well, we'll be sure to include that in the show notes for everyone to access. We'll be sure to include a link to your podcast, Journey with Me Through ADHD, as well as to your book, Hi, It's Me, I Have ADHD. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to Shining with ADHD by your hosts, Lori, Katie, and Mallory of the Childhood Collective. If you enjoyed this episode, please like this video and hit subscribe so you can be the first to know when a new episode airs.
If you are looking for links and resources mentioned in this episode, you can always find those in the show notes. See you next time.